Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Movie Adaptation Month continues with the film that has pretty much everyone collectively asking, but why? No one wanted this movie. Like, it's a common tagline on older comics. The book you demanded! But no one was demanding this. Maybe a Catwoman spin-off from Batman Returns could have worked had it happened when it was supposed to have been made. And yes, that's how this movie started, a Tim Burton-helmed Michelle Pfeiffer starring Catwoman spin-off film long before there was a cinematic universe or anything like that. But 10 years of development hell turned it into this, whatever this thing is. One could argue that, it's not Selina Kyle, it's an original property, you should judge it on its own merits, but then don't call it Catwoman. Or at least make it good enough to stand on its own, which it most certainly does not. But the interesting thing about doing a comic adaptation of the movie is that the story is not that bad. It's not anything spectacular, nor really that compelling, but it's not tonally confused like Batman Forever or cramming in half a dozen storylines like Street Fighter. It's just an average superhero origin. No, I'd say the biggest sins of the Catwoman movie are in how butt ugly it is. From the costume, to the bizarre swooping camera movements, to the less than well-integrated CGI, to the bland color palette. Seriously, when it's not dark, it's just a very yellow movie. To the editing that makes it comparable to that Bohemian Rhapsody movie, there's nothing nice to look at in this movie. The film was directed by a man named Pitoff, and the bizarre CGI and camera swooshing makes a little more sense when you learn that directing is not the guy's main job, having directed all of 3 movies. Catwoman, a French film called Vidocq, I don't speak French, which I'm pretty sure features victims of the King of Worms, and the TV movie Fire and Ice, The Dragon Chronicles. No, his talents lie in being a visual effects supervisor. In fact, he was the second unit director and visual effects supervisor for Alien Resurrection, which I actually like, and quite enjoy the stylistic stuff there, where it's much more restrained. So the question becomes, divorced from the bizarre direction of the movie, is the comic adaptation any better? Well, let's dig into the Catwoman movie comic adaptation and find out.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. Brodsky, you're not the smartest. Life out, you're not an artist. Anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he's a man punch, wears a birdie hat. Linkara, he has a magic gun. Where'd he purchase that? Linkara, coins, robots, Amazon and trucks. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
Surprisingly, unlike our last two, I'm reading this one from a trade. Catwoman, the movie, and other cat tales. Ah, so Grumpy Cat's Christmas special also got a comic adaptation. I don't normally talk about the cover when I'm reading from a trade, especially in a case like this where the original cover of the comic is just a Jim Lee drawing of probably a promotional poster, and in this case, it's just the promotional poster. Sure, in the extras of the original printed comic, he does comment on how he got to spend a little time on set drawing rough sketches of her, so I can believe it's not from some other photo, but it might as well be. And yes, the costume. We'll talk about that later when she actually dons it in story. Full disclosure, with these adaptations, I've been rewatching the films so I can comment on what was changed, but with Catwoman, this one I just skipped through because it's just that bad. That being said, we already start off better than the movie because we don't have our main character, Patience Phillips, giving really bad narration about how terrible her life was. How she wasn't really an artist because she did advertisement work for a company where she got a decent salary. Because, you know, the kind of skills necessary to do such a thing don't count if you're being paid for it, I guess. An ethos that I'm sure will allow me to get title cards for free from Dr. Crafty if I mention it to him. Then again, today's title card has me in the Catwoman outfit, so what the hell am I paying for? Anyway, scenes have been reordered a bit in the beginning, starting off with Patience being annoyed by a party going on across the street with loud music that's keeping her awake. She spots a cat on the ledge outside her window. Oh, hi. Too noisy for you too, huh? And here I thought party all night was just a figure of speech, especially since it's only like 6 p.m. Man, the sun is setting early. The cat runs across the ledge and she decides to try and save it, which, yeah, I hate to say it, but the movie kind of made more sense. She thinks the cat is going to fall despite there being a human-sized ledge. In the movie, it was on top of an air conditioner unit and it was a lot more dangerous. And yet somehow, despite there clearly being crawling room, she slips and falls, having to hang off the edge. A cop down on the street spots her and goes up, kicking in her door before pulling her back up. So you're sure you weren't going to kill yourself? I mean, most people who are going to jump usually start by crawling along a ledge. That's just hard science right there. Also, just from the angle, I don't think you would necessarily die from that height. Definitely injure yourself, break some limbs, but just comparing her size to his in this panel, it looks wrong. Anyway, when the cat returns to the apartment, he believes her story. Maybe I could buy you lunch to make up for things? Yeah, I'm pretty sure the cost of lunch is equivalent to a new door. The next day, we see a meeting at Heder, the cosmetics company that Patience works at. They're launching a new product called Butylene in a week. It doesn't just hide the effects of aging, it reverses them. That embarrassing hairstyle you had 10 years ago? It's back now. One of Patience's friends, Sally, tests it out on herself. Hey, it tingles. Wow, I can just feel the years dissolving away. Along with my skin. She seems really impressed by this, despite the fact that if she was at this meeting, shouldn't she know about this product already? The boss, George Heder, also informs them that his wife Laurel will no longer be the spokesmodel for the company, giving it instead to a younger woman named Drina. Obviously, the idea of manufactured beauty and ageist and sexist beauty standards plays a large thematic role in the film, especially in regards to our main character and the hardships she has to overcome. Oh, man. I'm surprised they held out that long. Boy, he doesn't even wait for Laurel to finish talking before interrupting her to introduce Drina. But whatever, what's really important is that Patience gets chewed out by her boss. This isn't even close to what I was thinking, Phillips. Look at this red. I wanted it darker, richer. Maybe if you're releasing this product in a week, you should have had your ad campaign for it ready much sooner than this. She offers to fix it, and Laurel is in on this meeting for some reason, pointing out how she can have it ready by tomorrow, and really, who else is he gonna get to do it? Well, presumably one of the other artists that works for this company. This is not exactly a mom-and-pop beauty parlor. Midnight tonight. Midnight? What, are you also operating as a late-night horror host? Why the hell do you not just have her deliver it in the morning? You're the head of a major corporation! What are you doing around the office at midnight? Although office is a little misleading. Yeah, for some reason, she's delivering it to his manufacturing plant. How did she know he'd be there? I did rewatch that part of the movie to be sure. All he said was to have it to him by midnight the next night. Hell, why did they even need the extra day there? His only complaint was wanting a darker shade of red. This should take like a few hours tops, and I only say that because of the need to make new prints, which still feels overly generous a time frame for this. Then again, maybe I'm just mad because of how much I want to punch this guy. See, it's not evident in the comic, but here's how he looks in the movie. Still don't get why he has such a punchable face? Because he's played by Lambert Wilson, who more notably played the Merovingian in the Matrix sequels. Yeah, That asshole. I suppose he's playing to type by his performance as a complete and total douche nozzle, but still. Anyway, Patience decides to break into the plant so she can deliver the art to him. When she enters, she overhears a conversation being held with a scientist, who mentions that the FDA never found out about side effects to Butylene. Nausea, headaches, fainting spells, addiction. But the worst of all? But these long-term effects, people turning into monsters? I thought I could live with it.
Neat idea, bad image.
I don't know, it seems like the FDA dropped the ball on this one. Also, why the hell are they moving forward with this? I can see the company not giving a crap about it being addictive, but as soon as people learn it will literally transform people into monsters, your entire company goes down the drain. I mean, I know corporations are all about that whole make all the money now and think about the consequences later thing, but it seems like the kind of defect that would make the company wince and go like, you know, why don't we fix that first before we try putting it on the market? This might lead to some consumer resistance. However, Patience spots this, and when she gasps in horror, security is called. They run after her, and one of the security guards, for whatever reason, opens fire on her! She's hit and falls off a scaffolding into a drainage line, as opposed to getting blasted out of one in an over-the-top manner in the movie. Her body washes up along a bank as a cat approaches her, or rather half a dozen cats or so. Instead of the comical CGI cat unconvincingly meowing and breathing onto her, this one apparently just has heat vision on it that wakes her up, filling her with images of cats, other feline species, a cat god of some kind. I want to say the goddess Bast, but the figure seems wrong for that. She gets up and runs off, with this orange tinting that I think is supposed to indicate her having night vision now, except we see her in the night vision, so is this actually from the perspective of the cat? I don't know. In any case, I guess she lost her keys since she ended up breaking into her own apartment's window. She's there for a while since Sally leaves a voicemail for her about Hedare being on the warpath after missing her deadline. Also, that cop from earlier, Tom Lone. Tom Lone? That's not a romantic interest, that's a rejected 80s action movie character. Golan and Globus looked at the script for the movie featuring that guy and told the scriptwriters to try harder next time. Patience can't remember what happened, and soon she shows up to work, presumably having showered. At her desk, Douche Boss shows up to berate her. You never even bothered to deliver the designs. Well, then maybe you should have told her she can leave it at your secretary's desk, you idiot! You do not, in fact, even know where they are, and your excuse for not knowing where they are is, I don't remember. Your incompetence is staggering. Movies like Catwoman are really in no position to make the statement, your incompetence is staggering. Patience finally starts insulting her boss, much to his shock. I'm so sorry. So sorry for every minute of my life I've wasted working for an untalented, unethical, unappreciative egomaniac like you.
You know your predecessors had much more respect.
Naturally, she's fired, and her co-workers all compliment her immediately afterwards. And frankly, it sounds like sarcasm. You go, girl! Awesome! You're my hero. Her insults basically amounted to, you mean jerk! I'd be more impressed if she called him an engorged blemish on the face of humanity, only instead of excreting pus, it's pure liquid smug. Also, don't worry, I'm sure someday you'll be able to grow a neck like the rest of the big boy executives. Detective Solo gets some donuts and coffee delivered to him by Patience, who asks for another chance, since I guess they missed their date. Meanwhile, Sally gives Patience a gift. Here, a little something of appreciation from a grateful art department for taking down Hedare. You know, for artists, you really suck at thinking creatively. How about if she told him, hey, the Wax Museum called. They say another new pair of lips is available for you to affix to your clammy face. On the street with Sally, Patience hisses at some growling dogs. Get it? Because she's becoming a Catwoman! And the two look at some jewelry that they want to get their hands on, but then Sally collapses. At the hospital, the doctors want to keep her there for observation, which Sally uses as an excuse to grin creepily and keep applying Butylene to herself. At home, Patience examines the gift she got, a leather jacket, and decides to give herself a haircut. She then rides out on a motorcycle that she just has now, Yeah, in the movie, you can kind of hear someone say, "My bike!" as she takes it, but where she got the keys for it or anything like that is unclear. And there's no scene of anything like that in the comics. It's just boom, she's on the motorcycle. She passes by the jewelry store, intent on robbing it, but discovers a bunch of thieves already there. Apparently, a lesser-known ability of cats is spontaneously generating objects out of thin air, since aside from the motorcycle, Patience suddenly gets a mask from nowhere. Yeah, we see where she gets it in the movie, but not here. As has been pointed out before, her look during the scene is honestly 1,000 times better and more Catwoman-like than what she wears later. The leather jacket, the mask. If this had been her outfit, maybe add some cat ears, it would have been fine. Sure, it's not great at hiding her identity, but it would look good. It's the same thing as the Harley Quinn degeneration of outfits. Sure, tastes vary, so obviously some people will disagree, but there's this assumption in design that skimpier equals sexier. Quite frankly, she looks cooler and sexier to me in this outfit than she ever does in her actual costume. Anyway, after beating up the jewel thieves, she goes and steals a bunch of jewels herself, arriving back in her apartment to revel in it for a few seconds before realizing what she did. It's actually a pretty well-drawn sequence as we see her transition from one mood to the next. Kudos. Anyway, she returns the jewels in a big bag with a note labeled, "I'm sorry," but unfortunately, after the decent emotional stuff, we have another editing mistake. Lone Cop is at the jewelry store investigating when another cop gets his attention and shows him the jewelry bag. Except now Lone is the one who says the next line. "We found this in the alley. I'm also pretty sure some cats have peed on it." In case you haven't picked up on it yet, the movie is actually paralleling Selina's journey in Batman Returns. Up to a point. We have a meek woman working for a domineering asshole boss who murders her and is brought back to life by cats. I know it's on the fence about whether or not the cats actually did that in Batman Returns, but there's room for interpretation. Which causes her to adopt cat-like traits and a personality shift to be more assertive and confident while also towing the line between hero and villain. The primary difference is that in Batman Returns, this is causing a downward spiral for Selina because it makes her at war with herself, whereas Patience is actually more fully becoming a quote-unquote better version of herself. And honestly, that's okay. One could argue that surviving that trauma is an empowering, transformative experience that leads to a positive change. The only problem I see is that in Catwoman, it's still set up initially as almost a dual personality, especially when she realizes what she's done with the jewels, but then that's dropped, which gives the impression it's not something being done under her own will and volition, but maybe I'm just reading too much into it. The next day, Patience brings the cat that keeps showing up to its owner's house. "I'm sorry, but I followed this cat here and—" "Followed? You looked at the address you found on her collar." Well, at least in the movie you did. Which was, oddly enough, written on fortune cookie paper. "Ah, yes, midnight saved you and has finally brought you to me. Come in, come in. I've been expecting you. I'm your creepy exposition dump." Frances Conroy plays Ophelia Powers, and her performance is weird. I once again blame it on the direction, because I'm pretty sure Pitoff was going for mysterious and otherworldly, but instead she just comes across as unsettling. The comic foregoes the fact that she has a gajillion cats as well, because again, subtlety is for people who don't edit their movie as if every cut gives them an orgasm. That being said, the comic is much more efficient. Patience in the movie has 2 visits to Ophelia, whereas the comic combines both scenes into one, plus leaves out the stupid catnip bit. But yeah, Ophelia just has this creepy way of talking, as if any second now she's gonna snap and try to murder you so she can feed you to her cats. Like I said, the comic is much better in that regard. Not just because of the lack of her voice and twitchy mannerisms, but the way she's presented in the comic is like a wise sage giving information versus continually showing us close-up shots of her with jarring edits. Mind you, the dialogue is only so much better. "I was a professor for 20 years, until I was denied tenure by male academia." Well, it didn't help that your doctoral thesis was how we can use cats to bring the dead back to life. She says it was the goddess Bast who brought her back to life, and that she's the latest in a long line of Catwomen, granting her new abilities. In one of the few underplayed moments in the film, there is a shot of Selina Kyle's Catwoman from Batman Returns amongst the photographs, but you'd never see it if you weren't looking for it, whereas the comic has a much more explicit picture present, which I prefer. If you're gonna connect it, connect it. Don't try to be cute. Hell, why not just make Ophelia be an older Selina Kyle? But whatever, she says that she can now accept her true self and be free. Which means it's time to finally talk about the costume. The stupid costume. She takes that very nice leather jacket that was a gift to her, rips and tears it up, adds a bunch of random claw marks to her pants, including on her ass, adds really high heels, which, unlike the movie, do not seem to be open-toed, thank goodness. And now her costume is basically a bra, a mask she got from Ophelia. She did not get that from her in the movie. That was an entirely different mask. Some gloves with claws, and a pair of random belts attaching her bra to her pants. No doubt coming from the Judas Traveler school of costume design. Also, in this shot in the comic, her stomach is so ultra thin that it's the same width as her head. On this page, she is going to snap in half like a twig. This costume. It really is one of those cases where all the people involved in making the movie, designers, creators, the director, the executives in charge, like, nobody with any authority looked at this costume and said, this is the stupidest idea ever. Go back and do it again. Oh, no. On the contrary, they're proud of this. To quote costume designer Angus Strathy, "We wanted a very reality-based wardrobe to show the progression from demure, repressed patience to the sensual awakening of a sexy warrior goddess." I could spend a whole 10 minutes discussing that quote from someone like Strathy, who, by the way, won an Academy Award for costume design, not for this movie, obviously, and try to unpack everything wrong with that sentence, but fortunately, the movie provides its own succinct critique.
Your incompetence is staggering.
This right here is where the movie officially throws up its hands and just wants to be someone's fetish fuel. And the comic does not help. Catwoman goes to a bar and just orders straight up cream from the bartender, as the comic makes sure to show her bending over, showing off her skin-tight, leather-clad ass, even a shot of her licking her lips. You know, sexy warrior goddess stuff. She finds a security guard who had shot her at the factory and drags him outside and threatens him to tell her why she killed patients. After saying that it was because of Butylene, she heads to the factory, only to find the scientist there murdered in his chair. What's worse, a janitor spots her standing over his body and assumes she killed him, causing her to flee the scene. After Patience throws away Sally's Butylene, we see that investigator Sequestered is examining the coffee cup he got from Patience, as well as the "I'm sorry" note from the bag of jewels, and wondering if there's a connection. And meanwhile, I'm wondering why he's handling that evidence without any gloves or having it in a bag or something. After they go on a carnival date, cutting out the scene of her rescuing a kid from a broken Ferris wheel, Catwoman breaks into Hader's mansion looking for him, but instead finds Laurel with a golf club. After the two finally stop fighting, Catwoman accuses Hader of murdering the scientist, and she actually thinks it'd make sense. As such, Catwoman goes and confronts Hader at a ballet, though what she hopes to accomplish isn't really clear. Like, okay, she's going to accuse him of the attempted murder and what Butylene actually does, and then what? Well, basically, it's that she's going to murder him, but especially considering, spoilers, it's not him, that doesn't exactly paint her as particularly heroic. Sure, Catwoman is not Batman. She's not going to follow the same morality, but the movie and comic have been trying to show her off as pretty much a good guy, and I think murdering someone in cold blood is kind of a whoopsie. In any case, Inspector Lonely is also there and chases after her, and she spouts off a bunch of innuendo that's supposed to be charming, but is only tolerable because it's shorter than the movie's version was. Anyway, after she escapes, she has another date with Officer Single, and he discovers the Catwoman mask under her bed, leaving it on a chair to indicate he knows. Later, she goes to see Laurel again. Laurel? Laurel? I got your call. Despite the fact that in the comic you didn't give me your cell phone and instead imply that you have my phone number, Or maybe a cat signal in the sky. Whatever. But yeah, Laurel has murdered Hedare and is pinning it on her. She flees back home, where Sleuth 1 is waiting with a gun pointed at her. He arrests her, though she protests her innocence and implicates Laurel. He has no evidence to move on that, though. All the evidence, every piece, points to you. Even my own eyes. Your eyes lied to you the first time you saw me, and you thought I was a jumper. Maybe they're lying to you now. I mean, seriously, you might want to get your eyes checked, especially since you weren't able to recognize me as Catwoman, despite me kissing you as her. She spots Midnight the cat at the bars of the cell, which, yeah, has a window facing out into an alley. Must be horrible for the inmates during winter. And realizes that with her new cat powers, she can squeeze her body through the bar. I know, she's magically become more cat-like, but every time I see this, it really harms my suspension of disbelief. Anyway, Flatfoot Solitary talks to Laurel, suggesting that he knows what really happened. When her attempt to offer him a bribe fails, she just attacks him, showing off enhanced strength. Fortunately, Catwoman arrives and the two fight. The movie says that Butylene only disintegrates your face if you stop using it, but if you continue to use it, eventually your skin turns into living marble and destroys the pain centers, so Laurel can't feel any of the hits she tries on her. Why did you come here tonight? To stop her? Revenge? I came to save you. And to stop her and get revenge. And as we know, seeking revenge has never ended badly for anyone named Catwoman. Laurel and two guards come walking up. And what are you? A thief? A freak? If you don't have an identity, why keep it a secret? Yeah, this is the movie trying to imply that she's split like Selena, having the same identity and personality issues as her. And no, it does not work at all. Patience has an identity. She has friends and a life, likes and dislikes. No indication that she's actually struggling with anything. The scene with her second-guessing the theft is all we get, which really just comes across more as, oh crap, this was a terrible idea. Constable Unaccompanied deals with the guards while Laurel and Catwoman resume their fight, with Catwoman scratching up her face. She's horrified when she looks at herself in a reflection, seeing herself as hideous, and the artwork actually adds a detail of her skin cracking in places as she's kicked out a window. Catwoman tries to reach out and take her back, but then she just lets go and screams while she falls like that. Help me!
Help, I'm falling at a 60-degree angle, breaking all the laws of physics.
No!
Stop, don't, come back.
Deputy Individual comforts her that it's not her fault, when it totally is. She's the one who kicked her out the window, and points out that if Patience wound up back at her cell in the morning, it'd be tough to prove that she and Catwoman were the same person. And so our comic ends with the two moving in for a kiss. That makes me a very lucky girl. You mean Patience is a very lucky girl. Exactly. This is resolution on us being the same person, even though it was never really in question. This comic sucks, but I have to say it. The comic is better than the movie. The movie is god-awful, as I have pointed out several times now. Just the various ways it is shot, edited, and just in general looks bad. The story is dull and thinks it's deeper than it actually is, but the comic doesn't have those problems. Sure, it has its own unique problems, missing a few details here or there that make some of the dialogue not make sense later, some artistic flubs or things that should have been caught by an editor, but it condenses or cuts a lot of unnecessary scenes, the actor likenesses are still pretty good compared to last week's comic, and the fight scenes feel like they have more weight behind them. Because it's based on the craptastic movie, it's held back from actually being okay, but it's the closest this story will ever get to being passable. Next time, it's off to another infamously bad movie for adaptation. For you see, my friends, we have worm sign the likes of which even God has never seen.
That comic book
I wanted it darker.
I specifically heard you say that.
I know what I said.
Your Honor,